City,
Yes, please.
remind us today's proverb.
Yes, same country, Burundi,
Same smoke.
same smoke, same heart, which you have done was burnt. If you, sorry, that is my own imagination. The if isn't there. You cannot hide the smoke of the heart you have set on fire.
You cannot hide the smoke of the heart you have set on fire.
Sorry.
You can't run away from it.
Not possible.
You start it, it'll follow you.
Deal with it.
This is an apt message as King Charles and the Third and Queen Camilla arrive in the country. This heart was set on fire many, many years ago. And he's coming back and it's still, the smoke is still up there.
Yes.
And you cannot hide from it. You've got to acknowledge it and deal with the fire.
Yes.
Yeah?
The Berlin Conference just entrenched it. But it's been happening for quite some time. Now, the smoke is with you. The fire may have died down, but the smoke is still with you.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's thick smoke.
Do you think, just looking even at the itinerary as announced by Buckingham Palace of what the king is coming to do you think that the British government is moving towards making peace on that? Because think about it. So the king is coming. So among the things that he'll do, of course, he'll look at new innovations and the meeting groups that are doing innovations in the country and all. But one of the other key things that he will do is that the unveiling of the tomb of the fallen warrior, of the unknown warrior at Uhuru Gardens, acknowledging what they did, going to the site of Kenya's independence. I mean, this is something that he could come into the country and just, do many other things. But the fact that he's going back into the colonial time up to 1963 and saying, this is the point when we handed over independence to the Kenyan people. But we got to acknowledge what we had done up to this point. Do you think it's part of it? It's part of actually the British government, His Majesty's government, saying, all right, let's do this. Maybe it could be managing the process, but it's doing something about it.
My father used to tell us stories about how in the African setting, when a man wronged his wife, and he knew he had wronged his wife, obviously, the words "I'm sorry" to fall from his lips was something that were very rare.
Yeah.
But that there were things that he would do that the wife would know, or the woman would know, that what this man is doing is that he's actually apologizing. That day he'll bring extra, and this was in the olden days, that day he'll bring extra meat or he'll bring a fowl from the village.
Is it that gentleman who failed to bring the chicken?
No, that was Okeke. Okeke is somebody else who was misbehaving. So now, the gentleman who failed to bring the chicken. So anyway, so he wouldn't say, my darling, I'm sorry. That would never happen. But his actions, right, would tell you that this man is regretting what he did, or he's telling you with this thing that he has done that he's sorry and that he hopes not to repeat it by the thing that he has brought to you. So I can see that happening. Now, that doesn't mean that it will be accepted by all as a way of apology, but it is an attempt at which this person is trying to bridge this gap that has been created as a result of his action.
True.
Okay? So I can see where that would fall in. That these are one to say, but the guy is coming. A visit alone means that there's some kind of fences that he's trying to mend.
Mend fences, yeah.
Right? Unveiling some of these things is part of an action whereby they've realized the whole legalese that lies behind them doing this. Imagine a country that essentially ruled the world. No other country has done it by way of the Commonwealth the way that Great Britain has done. Right? In terms of the colonies that they had around the world. So we can talk about it because it's in the open. They may not want to say very clearly that, you know what, if we apologize to one person, that makes us slave to everybody else that we did this, and that we then have to apologize to each and every one of them. And then what kind of can of worms does it open up when now we've done that? Who else do we have to do? And we will be basically everything that we've done over the last 100 years is going to be undone. So maybe at one kind of level, you even want to, I'm not saying understand it and accept it. I'm saying at one level, you'll say, okay, well, could that make some kind of sense from a legal and a sovereign point of view? All right, park that. But them coming here, them doing 1, 2, 3, does that show that they are like the man who is apologizing to his wife in action, as opposed to saying the words? Whatever if you want to call it conceitedness, if you want to call it arrogance, if you want to call it that if he opens his mouth to apologize, he will be operating from a point of weakness, call it whatever you want to call it. But does the action speak, in this case, louder than the word?
And should we be contextualizing apologies, right? Because in that family setting, I am sure even when the woman is wrong, she does not come out to say, my husband, I'm sorry. Oh.
In some cases, they'll kneel down and say,
there are things that they will do, just to try and show,
cook his favorite soup that day.
Exactly. Like that. There are things that they will do to show the man that I'm apologetic. I acknowledge that but I am sorry. Not necessarily by coming to say, I'm sorry. Okay? But the two of them are wise enough and have been brought up in this community, and some wisdom has been instilled in them to recognize when an attempt is being made at apologizing. To recognize that this person is actually making themselves vulnerable to me. By doing all these things, what they're in essence doing is they're acknowledging they're wrong, and they are seeking an apology. And I don't have to stand up and tell them, I forgive you, you stupid, and don't repeat that. All you just need to do is laugh along. If he has brought the chicken, say thank you for the chicken and cook it and serve it and, serve it very well and sit there and smile and laugh. Or if it's the husband and she has cooked the very best meal, he enjoyed and say, this one is even sweeter than the last one. You're basically showing, I am returning the hand, right? It's acknowledging. Should we do that? Should we sit back and acknowledge an attempt at an apology and then do the other thing?
It's true. In some cases, the woman will take the extra chicken that you've brought and dash it to the neighbors. So what has she told you?
I don't accept your apology.
Exactly. So now should we say that even you coming, please turn around at JKIA and don't even come, because Kenya is not even interested in having that conversation. But the extent to which a welcome has been proffered to the king and the queen, I think you're basically saying, Kenya is basically saying, okay, come and let's have a conversation.
I think it's expected that when somebody makes such a gesture, if you reject, you must have very solid reasons and you must escalate the issue.
Voila. You
cannot just take the chicken and take it to the neighbor. If that mzee called the other wazes and said, you know what, I made an attempt at apologizing and she only took the chicken, she'll be told, surely how can you do that? You should have called us if you had an issue. You should have called your side of the family and brought that issue. When you're taking it to the neighbor, what you're doing is you're basically just rubbishing this whole thing and exposing your family
and that unit. You choose for us not to have a relationship anymore.
At all.
Yes.
Right? So how should we treat this whole conversation?
Look, I think it's very clear. Look, it's not everything they use mouth to tell you. You understand what I'm saying? Like, they have told you the words "I'm sorry" to come from the mouths of the monarchy of Great Britain today, or anybody else for that matter from Great Britain. They've more or less told you it's not going to happen. And it's not about because they're not sorry. It's about what it's going to mean for them if they actually start how many will they do? The life of the monarchy will not live out the line of apologies, that they have to take or that they would have to make. So because they cannot do that, they're saying, here is what we are actually doing and offering that to you. And I think this is a read between the lines kind of situation, that if you cannot see that, then perhaps, okay, then maybe just lift the scales just a little bit, because more or less that's what they're trying to tell you. Is it that they're going to be conceited and arrogant in that they don't care if they killed a number of Kenyans? They don't care if the Mau Mau revolution and the people who suffered as a result of that, or that they don't care about the lands that were taken and given to sons and daughters of colonialists that left Kenyans, in bands of poverty for years? Is it that they don't care about those things, or that what they're trying to say is that they're trying to protect their own skin by not apologizing? So I think we need to look at this very carefully.
The very concept of colonization, or the very concept of imperialism, as I was stating in the other hour, actually at the heart of this discussion, because to acknowledge the heinous crimes that were committed in this process of colonization by the countries of Europe, that is now confronting your past and confronting it in totality. An apology would mean you actually begin the process of confronting it. In the absence of one could say that the ruling elite, whoever they are, still hold on to those vestiges of colonialism and have this thinking that not everything that was done was wrong. When Eric talks about compartmentalizing this thing, I'll take it a step further and add, looking for ways of justifying the process and looking at what you think are the benefits that colonialism came with it. And even saying that perhaps it was just some viciously misguided lot who are in a minority who committed these atrocities, but the larger plan was actually meant to be for the benefit of those who are colonized, and that is not true. Colonization was purposed to benefit those who are colonizing.
Yeah.
That is simple. It's just a simple statement of fact. If benefits accrued, they were incidental. Now, when they were deliberate, it was to create a ruling class among the colonized so that that rule would be continued. The British understood this really well, and they did it extremely well. They understood it. Now, are we suggesting that by actually saying we are sorry, forgive us, that they will be saying that, you know something, this whole process that we had for the longest time was actually morally repugnant and it was wrong. We should never have colonized you people. We should never have encouraged imperialism, because remember, imperialism was a tool for trade. Why did they colonize? I mean, go back to the history of Europe. Go back even to our own history. All these things were intended for you to get
control.
Exactly, and power.
Yeah.
That's what it was for. Now, in the process, a lot of wrong was committed. Now, that wrong, should it have an equivocal apology where you say, this is a no-holds-barred apology, come what may?
You see why I see would also be a little bit tricky, CT, because it goes along the lines of what you're saying right now. So there's two sides to this thing. There's the one side whereby an apology would mean actually we do regret this thing that we've done. But then an apology would cover everybody else who till today, there's this thing called neocolonialism, who till today do feel that you savages in Africa must actually be held under control and power. Till today, who still feel that. So when you apologize about those who've done it in the past, what about what's going on today? What about which is going on today? So you're going to apologize for things that are happening presently and the things that will happen in the future? Because an apology essentially means that you're not going to go back to what you've done. But we see that still playing out in today's world.
An apology also means you're taking responsibility
For that thing that you have done.
Yes, and admitted it was heinous.
Yeah,
You're admitting it was
terrible.
absolutely wrong.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
But there are people who believe that it actually wasn't wrong and that we still do feel that this empire of economy must continue.
But I think in this particular case, the statement that was made by William Hague in Parliament was acknowledging that what we did was wrong. It was doing all those things. The only thing was falling short of using the word sorry or apologize, right? Why? Is it because of the legal interpretation of the word apology?
Yes.
Because if it's just because of the legal interpretation of the word apology, then have they expressed apology or have they not?
You know, this is very interesting that you asked the question. Because also the words that are spoken, it's not just I woke up one morning and I went to Parliament and let me have a word. No, these words that they use are very carefully selected. Now, if you look at the word regret, as is defined by Cambridge, no less, they're the ones who made the language, so it's theirs. Regret will carry a component of apology. They knew exactly why they used the word regret. To cover this exact same thing that you're saying. Because they know that using the word I apologize, I am sorry, they know what that means as well. But they also know that using a word like regret is kind of like a blanket word whereby it covers the things I've done before and it also offers a little bit of sympathy.
Without acknowledging what it is that you did wrong.
That's what I'm saying. They were very careful about the words that were chosen. It could have used any word. It could have used any word. you know.
See the examples I gave of the
But
Dutch.
it does cover it, like you're saying. It does cover it, and that's why they use the word regret. It does cover it
I think
for them.
no. I think they were apologizing. What they were avoiding is the legal conundrum that comes with it. And the legal issue here is, all right, so if we use the word apologize, what follows thereafter is the whole conversation about,
Okay.
Reparations.
right, the reparations. And the reparations here are monetary in nature. And then it's not just Kenya that we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about, we'll open up the floodgates for everybody else. Can we handle the flood that will come if we open the gate with the word apologize? Or can we do everything else but then just leave that part of it and say, all right, so how can we navigate this going forward? We deeply regret. The first thing that we have a case that's in front of us here in the Crown Court that's been brought by a group of victims of what we did. All right, can we go and have a conversation with them and settle with them amicably? Then can we follow this up with other activities? What else could the other victims do or say? Maybe that's the point when we, Kenyan, missed the boat. Could have come up immediately and said, so the second thing that we want is return all our documentation, return our history, return our artifacts. The other thing is come and meet with, this was a group of Mau Mau, these are not all the freedom fighters. Let's bring the other freedom fighters, deal with them, have a conversation with them. Maybe that's what we should have done. And maybe the deep regret opens permission. Because I'm going to read the statement that was read by William Hague in Parliament in 2013. And he said, I would like to make a statement on a legal settlement that the government has reached concerning the claims of Kenyan citizens who lived through the emergency period of the Mau Mau insurgency from October 1952 to December 1963. During the emergency period, widespread violence was committed by both sides and most of the victims were Kenyan. Many thousands of Mau Mau members were killed, while the Mau Mau themselves were responsible for the deaths of 2,000 people, including 200 casualties among the British regiments and police. Emergency regulations were introduced, so we go on. We recognize that British personnel were called upon to serve in difficult, dangerous circumstances. Many members of the colonial service contributed to establish the institutions that underpin Kenya today. However, I'd like to make clear now and for the first time, on behalf of Her Majesty's government, that we understand the pain and grievances felt by those who were involved in the events of the emergency in Kenya. The British government recognizes that Kenyans were subject to torture and other forms of ill treatment at the hands of the colonial administration. The British government sincerely regrets that these abuses took place and that they marred Kenya's progress towards independence. Torture and ill treatment are abhorrent violations of human dignity, which we unreservedly condemn.
Go on.
The next is talking about now that particular case. I'll get the fuller statement after the break. But see, what they were doing is they were balancing between those two, saying we acknowledge
And we condemn
the role that we did. We strongly condemn what we did. We deeply regret what we did. We have had a conversation with the group that's come before us, and we are seeking to settle this matter out of court. Okay? So all these things have been said. What does that mean? Is that an apology?
Can we get back from it? Get away from it? Get forward from it?
Can we say, all right, so
move on.
they've apologized. Now, should we accept this? And then start saying, okay, so now that you deeply regret, so this is what you can do. The same way you dealt with that group of Mau Mau veterans that came. Now, the other things that we need from you are this and the other. We need to talk about what you did to the displaced communities. We need to talk about what you did to this and how it impacted. Maybe we should be preparing a list.
You know, my friend, when you say that and you look at the history of British colonization, where this discussion will take you is the Middle East, Palestine, Israel right now. Because in 2014, 2008, when Britain conquered Palestine from the Ottoman Empire, there began a chain of events that have brought us to where we are today. So you're talking British involvement on this planet and the things they did. Are we asking them to repent? Are we asking them to ask for forgiveness? Are we asking them to show regret? But in all these things, with reference to what is happening in Kenya, even as all these visits are planned and we've heard of them, is it that they came up with the ideas, or did they seek to understand from Kenyans what would signify or what would represent a good visit by His Majesty? What we would think would meet the very, very tenets that you're saying, communicating this, communicating that. Or was there a board meeting that decided, since His Majesty is coming, this is what he should do? And did they consider how that will resonate with Kenyans? Okay, he's here, fine, we've got it. Then?
And that's why I'm saying, that's why I was even asking about the question about the Dutch and the research institutes and all, right? Where is the voice of the victim? Throughout all this, by the time you're arriving at a decision that we want to publicly apologize and acknowledge and all and this and the other, are you doing it from your perspective, or are you doing it in consultation with the victims? The same thing that's happening now. Is it that we are dropping the ball? That's why I was raising the questions with the Kenya Human Rights Commission and the others. Should we be taking the reins and saying, this is a list of the things that we want the king and queen to discuss when they're in Kenya? And when they go back, let them take it back to their government and say, these are the things that we want. You have the issue of Mekatilili, you have the issue of, we have
Knowing
all
that
these
they were
artifacts,
coming,
we
should
have this, we have, this is it. Produce, even if it's a 50-page document, and say, these are the items listed.
We are serious.
Yeah, minus that, it's just talk. But let's take a break. We'll be back shortly.
Spice.
To this conversation, and we want to hear from you. 0719-012-600. The king and queen are in the country, and the conversation has been, so as they do all those other things that they're coming to do, should they apologize for what their government did during the colonial era? And in what form should this apology be? Should it just be the word, I'm sorry? Should it be, I sincerely and deeply apologize? What should it be? And then what?
Look, I think they should apologize, okay? Because I think that what's happened was, calamitous in nature. I think I don't think they were atrocities that were committed. I think they should apologize, okay? Now, what does that do? Does it open up then the road for reparations? Yes, it does. I think, look, an apology, you give an apology, and there's certain things you took away which you should return. There's compensation that should happen as a result of that. It is not our problem whether all the other nations upon which you practice your imperialistic ways then come at you because they've seen you've done it. That's not our issue. It's not anybody's issue. It could be Kenya today, Nigeria tomorrow. It could be Ghana the day after that. Doesn't matter. It's not their problem. The ones who demand an apology, if you make it, you apologize, you do whatever needs to be done. You deal with the other repercussions. It's not our fault for you to come and tell us, oh, then therefore, if I apologize to you. No, it's not our issue. It's yours to deal with. On the other hand, if you see that somebody's making a few steps in, then, perhaps it works. What an apology does, it takes away initial sting. I keep using my father. This is fantastic stories he used to tell us. And he would say that, when I think it's maybe a proverb that you also have here in Kenya. He would say, when a rat bites your toe, it blows on it a little bit to take away the initial sting. And that's what an apology does. An apology takes away the initial sting that is there. And if you don't do it, then the sting stays with you. So maybe that's what we're looking at here. It's more subjective than anything else, but it's important. Now, will it change anything significantly in terms of what you're doing or the road in which you're traveling? Probably not.
Let's look at it this way, right? And you've done well to bring up the issue of, two people sitting across each other and one is seeking justice. And for them, justice is acknowledge. First of all, acknowledge what you did to me.
Yeah.
And then show remorse. Show remorse for what you did to me. So let's go to Rwanda. The Gacaca courts in Rwanda. They brought together those communities. So there was the ITJRC in Arusha that was dealing with the bigger criminals. And then there's those local village courts that brought together the communities, the neighbors, and what they were discussing. Neighbor stands up and says, you know what? I know what I did. Neighbor stands up and says, this is what happened to me. I was here and so came and I saw so attacking. Or this is what happened. You all know I had 3 children. I have none today. You all know I had parents and they lived here. They are no longer here. You all know that, you all know I was like this and I am no longer like that. And then the perpetrators would stand up and say, I acknowledge this is what I did. I did this and the other. And for that, I really am sorry. And I really want to apologize. But you see, what had been set up in motion already by the setting up of the Gacaca courts it was not the issue of the other punishment. It's not when you say you're sorry, then the next thing is going to be you bring all your cows, you seed your land, you do this and the other. With the knowledge that if I stand up to apologize, we will deal with it at that point.
Yes.
And nothing more comes out of it.
Yep.
We will then say, how do we move on from here together?
Yeah.
That brought in the perpetrators to actually stand up and say, I acknowledge, I am sorry. Should we do that in this country? In this case then? And say, all right, you guys, Sawa, you did what you did. Okay? We know that you're fearing, if you say you're sorry, the next thing that happens now is we now come back with invoices.
So this what look
and say, yo, so and so should go
all
to
right,
jail.
so I
This
hear what
the
you're
thing.
saying. Is the apology demanded then a road to ask for compensation? Or should it not just be that an apology demanded is really for us to get to that point whereby you say, you know what, okay, we're on the same page now.
Let's bury the hatchet.
And let's bury the hatchet. Because there are two, it could be that or it could be the other. And is it all right to, because look, what is it that you will do that will bring back a life that was lost?
None.
Nothing.
But this hatchet that we are burying, I mean, what is it? Are we talking about the same hatchet? You see, if you look at, say, for instance, the apology that was made by the Dutch to Indonesia, there are those who argue, these guys just talking of 2014, 2017, 20th century. But the colonizing period was 350 years. Why aren't they apologizing for that? You see, the people who are there are those who argue who are courageous in apologizing were the Germans. When they apologize in Namibia, there are those who argue when they're comparing, they say, those guys didn't just apologize briefly. They went into detail and they said, folks, this may not be enough, but can we start with this and see if this can at least help these areas, because our contribution to this mess that may be here, let's acknowledge there's an economic aspect to it, and let's try and see if this amount can help over a period of time. Let's see. That conversation, there are those who regard it as an honest conversation.
Okay.
If you take that argument, you would argue that the UK, with the Commonwealth, and all these Commonwealth development organizations and all these things, that has been their way of saying, folks, it's not that we don't know, we do know.
But how about
how about we help you build Buruburu, for instance, okay? Yes.
Or Nairobi Railway City.
We're actually trying to show you that we know we did wrong.
Yes,
why don't we help you train your soldiers in our country? British Royal Navy College, whatever you want to call it. There are all these things that are supposed to be bilateral. Now, the question that one asks is, are those moves successful? Do they help put an end or begin a new chapter in the relationships? One could argue they do. But how far do those relationships actually help the Mwananchi?
I'm not 100% convinced by the stories that are written by the colonizer who comes to apologize, and now they put it out there and say, you know what, we apologized, and see, we have moved forward, right? I'd like to hear from the people of Indonesia. I'd like to hear from the people of Namibia. Are they the ones who said, yes, we accept the apology, let's move to the next step? Were they on the driver's seat of that conversation?
Actually,
Or was it this other person who's still a bigger power who comes and says, you know what, I'm sorry, now let's do this. Huh? I'm going to give you 17,000 shillings,
good for you.
but I'll be giving you 1,000 bob every 3 years. So for the next, 17 times 3, that's, how, just to sort you out,
Actually,
And the Namibians are 100% happy with that.
when you
Were
ask
they
the
the
question,
ones who came up and said, all right, so these are the reparations, this is the figure, this is how long we're going to do it? Were they the ones?
Okay.
The Dutch and the Indonesians, are they the Indonesians the ones who did this?
the Indonesian people represented by their politicians, many said, no, this apology.
Not enough.
Look, that's where the 350 years. Look, if you want to apologize, forget the First World War.
Do the whole hog.
If you really want to apologize, go the whole hog. Now, the discussions about reparations are held. It's not as though someone comes up with an arbitrary figure. I would ask the question, who is it that represents the so-called
That's the
Mwananchi?
thing.
Who? And this person who represents the Mwananchi, do they really have the interest of Mwananchi at heart?
It's a managed process. It's a managed process. So I was saying, if you look at that Rwanda case, you're saying, so you two shall sit together. Okay? Let's remove the other things that would make you not have this conversation.
But you must have this conversation.
Just sit there and have a conversation. Can you just start from the most basic part? That you and you sit, you say what is paining you, you acknowledge the pain that you've caused, and can you then agree to shake hands or not? Come back tomorrow if you don't agree today, until the day that you shake hands. When those two people shake hands, they have shaken hands. Then thereafter, let's talk about what happens. In this particular case, we're being heralded towards...
It's like a one-sided conversation.
It's one-sided conversation.
You know, one of the things that is impossible to do, it is impossible to erase the pain and the memories that have been caused. That one, you can say all you like. It's never fully erased. What you do is provide a mechanism by which that pain can be dimmed over time. And so that a new narrative can take force, and then one can look at life differently. That's what you actually hope for. But it has to begin with that honest acknowledgement of, this is what you did, this is how I felt, and this is what it meant to me. You're talking about Kenya. When the colonizer left, and the colonizer even gave us money to pay the settlers whom they had brought here, and you look at central Kenya, what happened? The land that supposedly had been taken, what happened? Did those who had been unsettled go back to the land? No, they did not. So what happened? Where did they go? Where were they taken? You see, it's a conversation that has to be given perspective, but we must also acknowledge and say, look, there's a point at which people move on, but move on to what? That really is it.
That's it. And have they that's profound. Because, and in the time between when these things happened and the space in which we're discussing today, have they not moved on? Have they been held in some kind of limbo where the true potential has not come out, that they were not able to do certain things because we're hanging under this cloud of the things that were done to Kenya, for example, and we were not able to progress? There are people today, intellectuals, professionals in their own right, who believe that the development that would have happened in Kenya did not happen as a result of this colonialism, complete assimilation of the Kenyan people and culture that happened because of colonialism, that they say that had it not happened, that Kenya would have been much further than it was today, believing today. So, did nothing happen? And now that we say, because moving on, what does that mean? All right, that we then kick in the gear and then we go. So does that mean that nothing actually happened between the time that the flag was raised and that you left in Swaz, and today when the apology is being sought, that nothing happened? And that Kenya is incapable of moving on without that apology? Is that... There are people who believe that.
Kenya can move on. But you see, the question to what arises. Look, you're talking legacy. Why don't we look at real situations and what it is the legacy is? For instance, when you talk about the marginalized areas, northeastern Kenya, do you know why they were marginalized? The simple reason is because the people, Kenyan Somalis, and those who are in the border of Kenya decided they wanted to secede. Said, this thing, it's not working for us. The British said, really? Over a collective dead body. Thereafter, whether it was a punishment, whether it was fine, you decided to nyoko, now here's what you're going to receive. Okay? But they were marginalized. It's not complicated. Why is it that the Mau Mau, why did the Mau Mau come about? What do you think? You think it began by saying, let's take arms? No. It didn't. It never starts that way. People take arms when the conversation they wanted to have isn't being had. And if anything, they just listen, but they are never given an opportunity to speak. There are those who argue the Second World War and the First World War opened people's eyes. They realize, wait a moment, these colonizers are just like us.
Kumbe.
Oh, they also die. I see. Okay. So why then are they telling us to do things which we know very well we can do for ourselves? This conversation gets worse when you then have our own homegrown, homebred Africans taking charge, and they are no better than the colonizers. The only thing we can claim is that we are now free and we are independent. And they'll say, but you see, with your independence, you're doing this and the other.
Yeah.
And yet, the acknowledgement and the discussion around, okay, we hear you, and this thing we're calling aid, is it aid or the proceeds from what they benefited from our country being brought back to us? It's a very huge conversation.
It is.
But, as Eric asked, would we have a better conversation if, as those of us in Kenya, and given that we have, what do we call it, public participation? If the public were actually asked to participate in this and ask, do you want to forget about colonialism? Do you want to discuss it? What do you think should happen? I think it's a beautiful conversation to have so that people actually get to talk.
Because, absolutely, you got to get down to the nitty-gritty. Because look at the Gashaka courts that we're talking about in Rwanda, for example. What do people say? Yes, I know that I'm standing up today and it is my neighbor who raped my daughter.
Yes.
I'm standing up today and I know that it is me who hacked your husband to death. That is the kind of conversation that they were having. And then for the other person to actually speak to your face and say, actually, you know what? I forgive you. That's the nitty-gritty that we're speaking about. So if you want to graduate that conversation, and if we were talking about how were the people involved, the people that when the Dutch came to apologize, did the people of Namibia say, we accept, thank you very much? Are we saying that the people today, Mau Mau, or people in Kenya today, in the parts where they took huge tracts of land, ancestral land, and people said, you know what, it is okay that you took the land that my forefathers left to me that I would have given to my children, I forgive you. Or that my husband, who I never saw my husband again after he was put in those dungeons that you did, it is okay. Or that my children never had an opportunity to grow in the manner in which they would. And we're actually saying that you're going to have a public participation, face-to-face conversation, and people are going to say, it is actually okay. Let's lay down the gauntlet and let us do what?
Move. But you know what you're moving away from, and then you have an idea of what you're moving towards.
That's it. Exactly. But that it would be perhaps I'm saying, if you're truly going to say, let's move on, that's the kind of authentic conversation that you should have.
Inclusive.
Now, if you're not going to have that, don't bother.
Let me take this thing a step further. As we get to the end of the hour. If we're demanding this of the king, we should demand it of our current leaders. We want some honest conversation about the things that are happening here.
Let's
we
be
seem
honest.
to go around in circles.
Yeah.
And you see, there was an attempt at that, but it was a half-hearted attempt, right? TJRC.
Yes. How did that go?
Because that is the essence of this whole thing is a truth, justice, and reconciliation mechanism.
Yes.
Okay? If we say we wanted to have that in 2008, we established a TJRC, and it was to look back at what has happened in our country historically, historical injustices, communities against one another, government against communities, all these humans against each other, all this. Let's have open conversations. We attempted it, we did not.
It was derailed.
It was derailed.
Yes, it was.
Those that are championing for now this conversation with the UK are not championing for our own conversation to continue. Should we also be saying, you know what, this TJRC was it was abortive. Yeah. Basically, we spent half the time of the TJRC arguing on whether Kiplagat should chair that commission.
Or not.
That was half the time. Then the other half was, I don't know, are they getting their allowances? Then they produced a report which should have been discussed in Parliament to date. that report has not been discussed by successive parliaments of the Republic of Kenya. Truth, justice, reconciliation, apology. Why can't we have our own honest conversations about that? Because if we created that framework, then we would say that let's have a framework where Kenyan communities, representatives of Kenyan communities, are sitting across the table with the UK government and
Exactly.
saying, this is what you did.
Short of that,
And the
it's
British
alright.
government then says, all right, we acknowledge, we hear you. We get what the king is coming to say, a deeper understanding. The only deeper understanding would be talking directly one-on-one with the victims and them telling you this is what happened.
You know, as we end,
And then you apologize.
there's one
Or not.
There's one individual who actually gave a perfect example of an apology. This was Kevin Rudd, the Prime Minister of Australia, 13th February 2008. It was sitting Parliament. Now, it was detailed, not just we're sorry,
Who was he apologizing for?
the indigenous
The indigenous.
natives
Oh, the indigenous,
of Australia.
okay.
And he detailed it. Detailed, blow by blow by blow. And then said, moving forward, this is what we're going to do.
Yeah.
Okay? So there are apologies and there are apologies. I am of the opinion that successive governments in this country should apologize to this country and apologize to the citizens for the way they've mismanaged our affairs, for the way they've mismanaged our resources, and for the way they've mismanaged the trust that we've given them.
Problem with it is that in Kenya we haven't had successive governments.
We've had the same government.
Yeah.
Well, then the same government. There's no getting away from this one. The
He's
same
going to
government.
apply it to whatever.
Same government.
The same government is not ready to accept what it
No,
has done.
the same government is not even ready to acknowledge
Yeah.
anything that may even approximate wrongdoing.
Yep.
Yes.
Somebody is saying we Africans should apologize to God.
For?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I would have thought he would have said God should apologize to us for making us Africans.
Okay.
Well, no, I mean, if we follow that trend of thinking,
we might as well take it to its ends.
exactly.
Okay.
And then the question would be, why would God apologize? God had a very good reason for. If you're a believer, in that, he had a very good reason, and that reason is a good one.
Resources. He
Precisely,
gave you a
gave you
brain.
everything.
Yeah.
So what is he apologizing for? You should apologize to yourselves then.
No, that's why now you should apologize to him
Yeah, we should
for
apologize to God.
misusing the opportunity.
Yeah,
Or for
good
not doing
opportunity.
good with the things that he gave to
Given
us.
to us.
Well, thank you very much for tuning into the Situation Room today. Thank you for tuning into the Situation Room this month. We'll see you next month. Sing, go until November.
I'll be gone to November. I'll be gone to November. To my friends, I'll be gone to November. January, February, March, April, May.
Well, have a lovely one. We'll be back tomorrow, God willing. Tomorrow will be the 1st of November, 2023. Good morning. It's now 10 a.m.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.